Yo, what up? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another video. So before we get into this video, please do me a favor. Make sure that you smash the like button on this video. Make sure you drop your boy a comment. Let me know what you think about the content. In addition to that, hit that bell icon twice so that you are notified for every video or live stream that we do, so you can be the first to get access to this amazing content. All right, so let's get started. One of the things that we complain about nowadays is the fact that there is very little acknowledgement of the economic impact of slavery and racism here in the United States. Now, many people say, well, how does that harm you? None of you were slaves. What is anything going to do to benefit you now if we address things that happened hundreds of years ago? That is a very good question. My answer to that question is, let's take a look at how companies who have benefited from the things that have caused a lot of our detriments are still benefiting today, as well as how a lot of the things that took place back in those days actually caused some of the stereotypes that lead us to our own demise. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to go into this article, and this is an article from Fortune. And this article says, inside the cottage industry, trying to revive Aunt Jemima and other brands with racist roots. Now, if you know anything about Aunt Jemima, if you know anything about Uncle Ben's, all of those kind of brands that are rooted in deep Southern Black imagery are all out of the roots of stereotypical slave memes, characters. All right. So when it comes to Aunt Jemima, the root of Mima, Aunt Jemima, it comes from the mammy stereotype. It's the larger Black woman who has the bandana around her head and is typically loud and takes care of children. What people don't know is that one of the things that this quote mammy figure used to also do was breastfeed the master's children. This is why when it comes to breastfeeding in Black women, a lot of people feel a certain kind of way when it comes to breastfeeding. They believe that there's slavery and stereotypical connotations attached to it, which is very unfortunate, because if you understand about how immunoglobulins and immunity works, breastfeeding is one of the most important things that a child can get at a young age for brain development as well as immune system development. All right, so let's get into this article with that being said. All right. So again, this is inside the cottage industry, trying to revive Aunt Jemima and other brands with racist roots. All right. So here it says, this summer, the Black Lives Matter movement and the fight for racial justice spilled over into the most unlikely of places, the supermarket aisle. Now, the only problem is, and I've spoken about this before, please pay attention to it, is that one of the things that Black Lives Matters does is it hijacks legitimate causes and legitimate issues that people has, corrupts them, creates a bad public atmosphere, and then uses whatever benefits it gains from those movements to benefit everyone other than Black people. All right. So here it says, Quaker Oats, a Pepsico subsidiary, acknowledged that the origins of its Aunt Jemima brand with overt ties to American slavery are based on racial stereotypes, and said it would change its name and logo. Mars echoed that and promised with its Uncle Ben rice line, declaring that the company stood in solidarity with Black community. Dreyer's, the parent company of Eskimo Pie ice cream bars, said it recognized that the term Eskimo was derogatory and would rebrand it to commit to being a part of the solution on racial equality. Now, here's the thing. Everybody knows what Uncle Ben looks like. Everybody knows what Aunt Jemima looks like. Everybody knows about Eskimo pies. If they actually care about being part of the solution to, quote, racial equality, all of the money that is made on the broadcasting and marketing using these characters, that would need to be redistributed back into those communities, because there was no copyright taken and there is no one who is benefiting at an ownership level from any of the proceeds that these companies make. So people ask, how is slavery affecting you today? Well, I can definitely tell you how it's affecting Uncle Ben's Rice. It's a $1 million, billion-dollar business. I can tell you how it's affecting Aunt Jemima. It's a $1 million, billion-dollar product line. I can tell you how it's affecting black people. None of those mammies who breastfed all of those people who this image is based off of are getting a penny. As a matter of fact, all of those people are headed towards a zero wealth gap, and all of those people are at the bottom of the socioeconomic class here in the United States. So it's not pseudoscience and it's not rocket science. Simple regression mathematics will answer any question that anyone has about any of this. All right. So now it says the companies, aware for decades of the racist history of the names and images of certain brands, have tried to past update them. Quaker removed the kerchief from Aunt Jemima's figure in 1989. For example, in 2009, Mars promoted Uncle Ben from butler to executive. Now, mind you, this was a promotion that did nothing monetarily for Uncle Ben or anyone who looked like Uncle Ben. Just like taking a bandana off of Aunt Jemima's head did absolutely nothing financially for any of these people. But yet and still, they say they want to do this for racial equality, but the balance sheet when it comes to accounting is still not balanced, which means that there is no equity that has been divvied out as a result of any of these changes. As a matter of fact, what they could do by using these as talking points is actually increase their revenues by appearing to be more friendly to social justice causes, which again, social justice is either here or there. And you know, the AWGs like to complain about social justice. Let them. I'd rather, be an economic justice warrior instead of a social justice warrior any day of the week. All right. So now here it says activists who had pushed for changes celebrated, but so did those operating within an obscure corner of the trademark world. The fact that companies were dropping these iconic brand names meant that someone else could eventually obtain and use them instead. After the food giants made their announcement, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office received 3 trademark applications apiece for Aunt Jemima, Eskimo pie, and 1 for Uncle Ben's. And I guarantee you, I will almost be willing to put my entire paycheck for the next year on it, that probably 0 of these applicants had anything to do with a black business or anything where black people would get any of the economic proceeds or resources from any of this nonsense. All right. So now here it says, with the applicants indicating they wanted to use the marks on food items. Trademark abandonment is a new kind of industry. It's a new kind of gold rush, says Jeff Kaplan, whose company Retro Brands filed applications for all 3 marks. See, there you go, Jeff Kaplan. What did I tell you? You know what I'm saying? This is something that Jay-Z or 50 Cent or LeBron James should have jumped on. You know what I'm saying? His operation acquires trademarks for brands that companies have let lapse. Chipwich and Victrola are part of his portfolio, and either licenses the names or manufactures the revamped products himself, but giving a second life to brands rooted in racist stereotypes, ones that big companies have deemed too problematic to maintain, is vastly different proposition from reviving those that capitalize on innocent nostalgia. Kaplan feels that brands like Aunt Jemima have been sufficiently updated and still have big markets, which include, of course, black customers, who he says agree that the brands are no longer derogatory. The simple fact that no black people are making any money off of these industries that are rooted in slavery and slavery imagery in itself is derogatory. The principle that there has been 0 wealth gained from any of this for black people is absolutely economically derogatory. Stop thinking in terms of social justice. One of the problems is that they have engineered your thought to make you feel that things that make you feel good are more important than factual, actual material assets. There is no measurable benefit to any of this being changed unless the money that was garnished and profited, that added up to revenues made by this company by use of marketing these characters, is reinvested, then nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing has changed, except for the fact that it'll now be even more acceptable for black people to buy this stuff, and they will increase their bottom lines even more while all of that money continues to outflow from our community and not get reinvested back into it, continuing to suppress us socioeconomically. All right. So now here it says Sonia Cattle, a professor at UC Berkeley School of Law who specializes in the intersection of intellectual property and civil rights, says that obtaining the trademark will be an uphill battle for the likes of Kaplan, and that's just the legal hurdle. There's also the social cost of resurrecting brands with painful histories, she says. Big companies are feeling the public pressure, she says, but these smaller individuals don't seem to care so much. The business of reviving abandoned brands relies on trademark laws, use it or lose it structure. An owner of a trademark must actively use the name in order to maintain it. You don't want people to be able to sit on trademarks and then sue everybody, explains Josh Gerbin, an attorney specializing in trademark law. Obtaining an abandoned trademark, however, is not a simple process. Unless a company files to surrender a trademark with the USPTO, applicants have to prove that the mark is no longer in use, and companies do have strategies for holding onto their old brand names. Coca-Cola, for example, said in October that it would stop producing Tab soda, but months before the public announcement, the beverage giant filed an application with the USPTO to use the Tab brand on clothing, a move that gives it continued ownership of the mark. For companies like PepsiCo, printing t-shirts and ball caps with the Aunt Jemima logo does not provide much of a solution. If you're saying a name is racist, are you going to still sell that merchandise and continue to profit from it? Gerbin asks. Absolutely. Look at all of the teams. They just literally changed the Cleveland Indians to a different team name. They're working on changing all of the other team names, but none of those have to do with food. And when it comes to all of those teams, none of those people actually got any of the proceeds from the millions and billions of dollars that those businesses generated. None of that went into the Native community. None of that went into the African American community. Just like all of the proceeds made from the Florida Seminoles, which, you know, the Florida Seminoles, that has to do with regional, but the Washington Redskins, the Cleveland Indians, the Atlanta Braves, there's no natives that are making money off of that. Just like there's no black people that are making any money off of Aunt Jemima and making any money off of Uncle Ben. So, you know, people ask how this affects us today. Let's not talk about how it affects us today. Let's talk about the billions of dollars that it's putting in other people's pockets today based off of our image. Image is important. You can trademark your own image. Jay-Z actually trademarked the color blue. You know what I'm saying? There's a specific shade of blue that Jay-Z copyrighted. He also copyrighted his name and his daughter's name, I believe, to maintain the rights. This is the same thing that artists say, never sell your masters. Why do you think they call it the masters? Because if you sell the masters, then that means that you are no longer the master of your labor. You have given that to someone else to continue to reap the benefits of the labor that it's producing capital and equity and revenues for you. Okay, this is why you need to pay attention to words. This is why people need to have understanding of financial aspects and business applications. All right, this is very important. Everyone should have basic understanding of this going forward and able to form a case against companies like this who use racist imagery and racist propaganda, benefit from it, make billions of dollars, and simply with the switch of a name or take a bandana off, even make more money off of it while continuing to suck your community dry and not reinvesting anything into it. All right. So now here it says Mars has skirted the issue with Uncle Ben's by renaming the brand Ben's Original. Experts say it's unlikely the USPTO would allow for another rice line that includes the name Bin because it would lead to confusion for customers in the marketplace. It doesn't really feel like a significant change, Gerben says, but from a trademark standpoint, it's genius. Kaplan concedes that the new name has killed his chances, and in October, he withdrew his application for Uncle Ben's. All right. So now here it says PepsiCo has yet to announce an alternative for Aunt Jemima, but says that once it does, it will continue using the old brand name on the back of its packaging, a decision that it says will let the company hold on to the trademark, which in turn enables us to appropriately preserve the history. So now we're getting done a favor. History is being preserved. Thank you. Thank you for preserving our history and not giving us a dime off of the billions of dollars that you made on this. Thank you. We appreciate that. That must be that pseudoscience. That's that pseudo accounting, that pseudo income statement where the revenues go elsewhere, not to the people that the image is based on or the intellectual property or the image, you know, that kind of thing, right? Okay, sure. So now here it says, from a business standpoint, that's a really hard place to get to. Kaplan believes his strongest shot is with Eskimo Pie, parent company. Dreyer's announced in October it had renamed the ice cream sandwiches Eddie's Pie, and Kaplan says the public announcement will make it hard for the company to fight him on it. Kaplan has experience in the ice cream sandwich business through Chipwich, Nestle's abandoned brand in favor of Toll House, and surrendered the brand name after fighting Kaplan on it for months, he says. Kaplan obtained the Chipwich mark and sold it to an investment company. I was astounded that they stopped making Chipwich, he says, adding that he believes Eskimo Pie will be even bigger. If consumers find the name offensive, Kaplan says, they have the option to vote with their wallets and simply not buy the product. Absolutely. But a lot of people do not even understand the history behind these things, and a lot of people don't understand how copyright, intellectual property, and use of image without authorization is actually taking money out of your pocket. You are being swindled. The simple fact that this stuff is on the shelf and no black person has ever profited any meaningful wealth from it is a problem. This is an absolute problem. Any business professional would agree. As a matter of fact, people have won cases like this. All right. It's one of the reasons why Napster was shut down. Copyright infringement. One of the reasons why the United States has such a problem with China. Copyright, intellectual property, and unauthorized use of imagery. All right. So now here it says in 2017, Supreme Court decision is at the crux of why brands built on racist stereotypes can still survive in the marketplace at all. Until then, Lanham Act prevented people from registering marks that were scandalous, deceptive, immoral, or disparaging. Here's my problem. This is how the United States and the system of propaganda has people's minds trained incorrectly. As far as I'm concerned, I have zero emotion about any of this. I don't care if they want to use, if they want to take a light-skinned dude with a beard, you know what I'm saying, and make a cartoon character of me in a derogatory way with big lips and put it all over the place. I don't care. But if you make money from it, that money better go to me so that I can pass it on to my kids, and so that when I pass away, my family is okay. That's what I want. My feelings are solid enough to where I don't care. This doesn't bother me. You want to make a picture of me? You want to make a troll of me? I don't care. You want to call me racist names? Hey, do it. But now when you start profiting off of that, if you're using my image, my likeness, my ideas, I need to be paid for it, or else we're going to be in court, or we're going to be at a patent office disputing intellectual property. That's the way that the mind state needs to be. That's where the frame of mind and the focus always should be. The focus should always be economically, because once you use that post-truth center, that post-truth politics, and you say, you know what, this is gone, now I feel good, guess what? Your pockets are still empty and somebody else is still rich to go and turn around and do it again in a more slick way, because these companies have millions of dollars at their disposal to allow attorneys to tie things up in court and create loopholes to allow them to do whatever they want. All right. So now here it says, but in 2010, an Asian American rock band led by Simon Tam called The Slants was banned from registering its trademark by the USPTO, which declared the name was offensive. So this is how they weaponize this. This is how they weaponize it. It's okay It's okay for descendants of slave masters to make billions of dollars off of companies that market using characters that look like the slaves. That's okay. But for a band that is actually of Asian American descent, they're not allowed to name themselves a derogatory name. It's almost like telling NWA, well, you know, that's racist. You can't name yourself that. but it's literally okay for politicians to do stuff like this. The politicians and media companies and social media content creators can literally talk about you like this without any recourse. But an Asian American rock band tries to set up a name based on a derogatory term towards Asians, and this guy himself is Asian, and the court says, nope, we're gonna protect you. You have got to be playing. You cannot be serious, but this is literally what happens when you are playing on a chessboard that you did not set up. You know what I'm saying? So it says Tam wanted to basically recode his slur, says UC Berkeley's Ketal, which is exactly like NWA, which is exactly like the reverse use of the N-word. You know what I'm saying? So here it says, and that, matter of fact, black people as a collective should file for intellectual property of that word so that every time it's used, we can sue or get proceeds from it, because it's one of the most popular words in the United States history. Stop caring about people using it. Get the copyright on it and charge them for use. Hey, go ahead, say it. You want to say it? I don't care. Hey, I'll be your N-word as long as I get 15 cents on the dollar every time it's used for eternity. You know what I'm saying? If you're gonna sell out the right way, where you actually get money in your pocket and you can take care of your community and take care of your family. You know what I'm saying? Tam filed a legal challenge under the First Amendment, arguing that part of the Lanham Act was unconstitutional because it violated an individual to the right of freedom of speech. Tam won the case, which went all the way up to the Supreme Court, that a provision of the Lanham Act was overturned. Tam was quoted as saying it was a win for all marginalized groups. I totally agree. But at the same time, a group of Native American activists was using the Lanham Act to argue that the Washington Redskins mark should be canceled because it's disparaging. The Washington Redskins mark should have been canceled because Native Americans were not making any money off of the use of their tribal image. That is the angle that I would have taken. I can't speak for the Native American community because I'm not Native American. I can't even speak for the African American community because, you know, I don't speak for everybody. We have a diverse group of ideas. I can only speak on what makes sense to me in the mind of using business logic, and using business logic to apply it to increase your socioeconomic status. My thing is, I would have let this been in perpetual existence as long as we were endowed a royalty. As long as a royalty is involved, I don't care what you do. If a royalty is not involved, cut it, end it. You know what I'm saying? Just like the song just did. What do you think about that timing? So now here it says the decision in the Tam case meant that the group had to withdraw its litigation against the Washington football team, which was winding its way through the Court of Appeals. One of the big tragedies of the case is that in recording the name Slants, Cato says, it recorded this provision of the Lanham Act as a civil rights issue. And see how this is how they weaponize civil rights against you. They weaponized civil rights in a way where Asian American man couldn't use the Asian American term. They weaponized civil rights in a way where it blocked out Indians from getting proceeds from the profits made by the ticket prices and use of the stadium and memorabilia and paraphernalia sold of the Washington Redskins. It did nothing to benefit them financially. And that right there is the key and the problem. And that's how you get locked out of wealth. And that is why, for the most part, everyone else's wealth gap is decreasing. This is one of the causes. This is one of the reasons. Legislation that's masked to appeal to your emotional needs instead of giving you repair economically. And that is post-truth politics, because emotional appeal has zero value and economic repair means everything. All right. So now here it says, Catal says that the decision led to a flood of disparaging marks being registered. The result of that 2017 decision is that people could still register these really offensive brands, she said. In July, the Washington football team agreed to give up the Redskins brand, but not because of this virtually worldwide movement against the name, says Cattell, but because of economic pressure from sponsors. Since then, at least one application has been filed with the USPTO for the mark. All right, so that's it. All right, so that's it on that issue right there. That is Aunt Jemima and the money that you are not making. So don't be offended. Don't cry. It's not worth your tears. Nobody cares if you're crying or not. You know what I'm saying? What you should be concerned about is the fact that all of the money is escaping your pocket and wallet. That should be the focus. All right. So now we're going to briefly touch on this because I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but I'm going to do another video that is completely about this topic. Again, the reason why I brought this in is because when it comes to Aunt Jemima is based off of what's called a mammy. The mammy is the woman who you usually see. She's in a lot of Bugs Bunny cartoons, a lot of Tom and Jerry cartoons. She's a large black woman, usually with a bandana on her head. And this character in slave time used to be what is called a mammy. And she was a mammy because she took care of the master's children. And one of the ways she took care of the master's children was by, yes, believe it or not, breastfeeding them with her milk. Not with the children's mother's milk, but with her own milk. And that is one of the reasons why there are sometimes ingrained resistances and negative connotations associated with breastfeeding, which is very interesting because a lot of the problems that children have health-wise is because of breastfeeding. And another thing is you have to understand that these people also understand that a lot of, single mothers are very low income, and that qualifies them for WIC. And WIC does not encourage breastfeeding. WIC gives you a ton of money per month to be able to go buy formula, which is nowhere near as good for developing brain tissue, and it's nowhere near as good for developing immune system. All right. And what do we have now? A worldwide pandemic. What do we have now? People pushing bell curve ideology, saying that black people have a low IQ. Well, let's talk about all of the biological factors that have been caused by the social engineering that the United States has done since its inception, right? If we believe in evolution, then there's no way that you can discredit this, right? All right, so let's get into this. Now, here it says, centuries-old caricature drives divide in breastfeeding rates. And again, remember, you are encouraged as a single mother, low-income mother, to get WIC. So not only do you not have to breastfeed, not only do you have these existing attitudes towards breastfeeding, but we encourage you to use artificial powder. Not good, nutritious breast milk with myelin sheath building and immunoglobulins. Okay? So now here it says, with no familial history, the only cultural memory some black women have of breastfeeding came from the echoes of slavery. And so people ask, how does slavery affect you today? Well, it turns people off from breastfeeding. That means that your next generation doesn't start off with all of the nutrients. So social engineering has created a biological disadvantage. All right, because there's generations of this. We already have a biological disadvantage because we were displaced, which is one of the reasons why sickle cell manifests the way that it does. All of this as a result of the United States. But the United States just says, get over it. Our DNA has been completely changed. And this is before you even bring in the element of epigenetics. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna just briefly glance through this, all right? We're gonna briefly glance through this because I just want to highlight on this part, and then we will go, back and do an entire video on this. Now, here it says, let's see. What influenced you on how you were going to feed your baby? Were there any cultural reasons? The informal conversations often held at local hair salons and libraries lasted hours, mapped the very different context in which African American women decided to feed their babies compared to other women. Sociohistory factors found that such stereotypes dating back to slavery had negatively shaped some women's attitudes towards breastfeeding. Well, there we go. Stereotypes from slavery are affecting what women do to raise their kids in a healthy way today. Problem solved. Everybody's happy, right? Many of the women's mothers or grandmothers had not breastfed, said Devane Johnson, so they saw it as a white thing. Well, it's interesting that they saw it as a white thing because the white women back then didn't breastfeed. They actually used black breasts to feed their child. With no familial history, the only cultural memory some women had of breastfeeding came from the echoes of slavery, such as wet nurse or mammy characters. And who is the mammy? Aunt Jemima. Aunt Jemima on some buttermilk pancakes. All right. So it's interesting, right? When people say, oh my God, well, everything is racist. And then when you actually look into history and you're like, oh my God, everything's racist. Like, this is insane. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says the first fictionalized in Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, a mammy was a slave who was forced to nurse the slave owner's children, oftentimes at the expense of her own children. So these mammies were not even allowed to provide their own biological breast milk first to their children. They had to give it to the master children. What do you call that? What does anybody call that? And all of those good nutrients that are not naturally produced by, the mother, they're actually getting a biological advantage from getting this nutrients from a foreign source. And if people don't believe that, then I have to ask you the question, why do we drink cow's milk? We're not cows. You know what I'm saying? So there's a reason why black women were feeding the master babies their milk. If you don't believe this, but you go to the store and buy a carton or gallon of milk from a different animal in a different species, but you don't believe that humans did this, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? So that is the part that I wanted to highlight on, because that is how we get back to the beginning. One of the things that is interesting about the mammy, about Aunt Jemima. All right. So with that being said, guess what that is? That is the end of this video. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little bit. All right. And make sure that you smash that like button. Make sure that you hit that bell icon twice for notification. Make sure you share this out to all of your social media networks, and we will catch you on the next video. Peace.